Osteoarthritis and osteoporosis, bone loss in midlife, as if we're not getting hit with enough things as we age. What is going on with bone loss? Why is this conversation so popular lately? Can we actually reverse it? What do we do to prevent it? All the things around bone loss, and what happens if we just ignore it. Today, we're going to dive deep into that conversation. I've got the founder of Hack My Age podcast. I've got Zora Benhamou here. And the reason I wanted to have her on is not only is she an incredible spokesperson, more than a spokesperson, researcher, advocate for aging well. She is incredible in that space, but she recently has gone through her own journey, which she has shared very publicly. She is dealing with a lot of this, with that bone loss problem, and she's working to turn it all around. And she is quite the expert when it comes to this topic. So there's a lot of things I wanted to interview her about today, but I want to dive into that conversation because Zora, my gosh, you were walking through it and you're the one that is aging well or supposed to be aging well. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be here. So thanks for the invite.
Zora, tell us what's happening here because, first of all, can you share a little bit about your background and what you do in this world and how you help women age so well?
Okay, so we should probably start with gerontology because nobody knows what a gerontologist is, or they confuse it with a geriatric physician. That's a physician who deals with older adults, but I study aging and longevity. So this is something, my interest is to understand the whole life course from birth to death, not just the older adults, because we want to understand why are we aging? How are we aging? Why do we get certain diseases? And it starts in childhood or intergenerational, right? So we need to understand the whole life course. And that really interested me, but it's not only from a biological perspective, but it's from a psychological and a sociological perspective as well. So we just kind of put all these pieces together because it's not just the foods you eat and the exercise that impacts aging, but so many other things that we can unpack today.
So when you say that, you said it, you're explaining that most of us have not heard of that. We've not heard of a gerontologist. Like that's not, what is that? How do you even become one? And when you say that it's different than what we are assuming it is, why aren't there many of you doing that?
Oh, I don't know why. Honestly, it is fascinating, but it's not a sexy topic. It's honest. I've told people to say, hey, you got to change your Instagram because gerontology it seems negative. And I thought, no, that's not at all what I want to do. I want to help us age well. We have a menu of choice with aging. Yes, there are older adults who are fatigued or hunched over, who are sick, who have diseases, but there's a whole other group of people who aren't. And unfortunately, our brain focuses only on the negativity. We don't see all those positive stories, but we do have a choice. And I'm sure we all can think of somebody who are in their 80s or 90s and sharp as a tack and moving really well. It exists. And we just, for some reason, are thinking that's an anomaly, and it's not. And we can change the course and the trajectory of aging by certain lifestyle and diet and habits and things that we can do to impact even our genetic makeup.
So social media really, and media, confuses aging well with age appearance, how we look physically. And believe me, I've signed up. I had my eyes done. I shared it publicly. I had my eyelids done, and I'm not afraid of those types of things. And I'm all into a lot of those things to look different. But there is a big difference between appearance, fixing the paint, fixing the coating, and actually aging from the inside out. What's your take sort of around that conversation? Because I know you're heavily online. You see a lot of this, and I've even seen you speak out a little bit about filters or fixing everything and the difference there.
Well, personally, I think everybody just do what you want to do. It's your life and no one's here to tell you what to do. If it makes you happy to get a facelift or to use a filter, it's your choice. Now, when it comes to my own personal choice, I don't like using filters. I just want to show this is what age, it's one of the choices, like it or don't like it. I think even when I shared our episode together, somebody looked at you and me and they's like, oh, she looks great, but Zora needs to do something. And I was like, well, it's okay. That's the way it is. But we have a choice. And this is what I think people should understand. And unfortunately, there is too much criticism for you're either too beautiful or too ugly. You did something or you didn't do something. There will always be judgment. Now, in terms of aging well, then we want to have examples in our life of how we want to age well. So if you're somebody who doesn't want to go for the facelift or wants to age like Paulina Poroskova, well, even though she's kind of blessed with beautiful
Hmm.
genes and she's just no filters, and fine, you go follow her. If you don't and you want to find the one who has like the best plastic surgeon, like go follow her. It is our choice. But in terms of the pressure that women have, then that's another story, because we feel that, oh, now I gotta go get a facelift, or now I gotta save 10,000 or $100,000 or whatever it is these days to do that. And again, it's life. You have to have that. You have that choice, but you do you is what I think we should do. But for the WHO, for example, has said that we do need to have realistic examples for aging. So when I was doing my master's, I had to do a project on using Instagram inspirational people who were aging amazing and they could do gymnastics and they were in the Olympics. And so the criticism that I got with that is that, well, it's people are going to think it's unrealistic. And I said, well, I think it's possible. So it inspires me. And again, I can't control what goes in your head, but they would prefer that we use something that's somewhere in the middle so that people don't think it's so intangible, that they actually will start to walk and get off the sofa and start to do the healthy habits rather than go, I'll never get to the Olympics and I'm not even going to look at that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And, just to kind of, I want to touch on that, the appearance conversation. And then I want to really get into sort of from the inside out and what health really is, and especially bone loss and how that is so critical. But when I look at people that are doing the fixing of everything, and that's me included, I'll throw myself in that box. Like, I'm the one with the hair extensions. I'm the one who got my eyelids done. Like, I'm a fixer. I do that. I also am very aware I'm not doing that for anyone else. I'm doing it for me, and it changes my mood. So I'm not trying to have anyone think I'm 20 or 30. I'm clearly not, and I'm 54, and I'm proud of 54, and I look 54 to me. When we do the fixing stuff, it's really for us. And like the woman that commented that you made that comment about that video. First of all, Zora looks great. If you're looking at us in video, she does physically look incredible. So the woman was just crazy. But I feel that women that make those negative comments to others, that's something inside them. And the same reason people fix things, that's something inside them. It's a confidence thing. And I think confidence, no matter what we choose, whether we're fixing things or just embracing it all, whatever it is, confidence is the key thing. Because when you have that confidence and you're in a good mood, you do live better. You are more likely to work out. You are more likely to be social, to have connection, to eat healthier. Like all those things go with confidence. So kind of align with what you said. I don't care whether people choose to do things or not, but I just wanted to point out, I believe it's really for the person doing it. It's not for other people. Like we don't fix things for other people, right? That being said, I'm not delusional at all, knowing that it doesn't matter what my hair or my eyes or whatever look like. If I'm not taking care of things from the inside out, I could have major problems, including bone loss. And I'm sure this was something that hit you kind of off guard. Can you walk us through sort of what did you find out and what were you navigating when it comes to osteoporosis? When you first heard those terms before you had any tests done or figured out what was going on, what was your understanding of all of that?
Yeah, when I was first told that I had osteoarthritis, had no idea what that meant. I'm 54 now, just like you, and I was told probably in my late 40s sometime, and I just said whatever, and then I continued my life because it's not that bad, and you can move on with it, and you just say, I'm going to reverse this. And then as the pain got worse and you lose more range of motion. And I'm going to explain a little bit actually what osteoarthritis is, because too many people think it's osteoporosis. And osteoporosis is the loss of bone density, right? Your bones become a bit more fragile. Osteoarthritis is a degeneration of the joint. Okay. It's the joints. The head. For me, it was the head of the femur. And then you start to lose the cartilage, then you have pain, and you can get spurs and a lot of things happen. It's just very painful, and it just gets progressively worse. And so when I understood that, I said, well, okay, what am I going to do to reverse this? I'm a biohacker. Hey, and I have very good contacts and I have access to wonderful doctors. And I attempted to reverse it over the years. And the things that I did actually was things that were working very well in terms of bringing relief. I got some range of motion back. The pain was subsided. But then those biohacks just weren't working for me anymore. And it interestingly coincided with more loss of my hormones and as I going through the menopause transition. So there came a point where the doctors said, look, you really do need to have a surgery, and you dive deeper and deeper. And I tried so many things, just like you have when you with your back. You spend the money, you spend the time, you just want your health back. And it was a real shock for me and for the people around me who know me, because I walk the talk. I'm doing
Mhm.
quote unquote everything right, everything that we all should be doing. So how in the world could this happen to me? And that's because I was set up for this. There, I had 9 of the 12 risk factors of osteoarthritis. And when you're set up for this, and it seems like there's no win or lose, you can't escape it. And after a while you accept it, and after a lot of tears and why me, and you go through the whole process, and you do associate your being, your person, as the person of longevity, the person of aging well, and then you are living in an 80-year-old body, and
So, Zora,
it's
I
not
have
right.
some questions here about this. So you
Yeah.
said you found out and you were in your 40s. First of all, how did you find out? Like, what was the test and what were the symptoms? And what were the markers that you said? You said you had a bunch of the markers. What are those?
Yeah. So I felt, you feel the pain in the hip. It's so good that you're asking these questions, because people go, "Oh, I feel hip pain," and
Mhm.
again, you have to get a diagnosis for this. So in the beginning, I was told I had hip impingement, and so you may have one of these stories, and that's when the bone is wonky. It just doesn't fit. Like there's a little nodule, and it's not really fitting in so well. And I said, "Well, why am I like that?" And they said, "Well, you were born with this. You're just lucky you lasted until your 40s. Like this should have been a problem a long time ago." And I got an MRI. So for me, the
Mhm.
diagnosis was through an MRI. I've done x-rays, because sometimes doctors prefer x-rays, but when they had to dive deeper, they really wanted to see what was happening with the cartilage. And you could see through an MRI that there is less and less cartilage. And then you won't try to regrow the cartilage. I tried PRP injections, tried so many things. So you do start with you lose as well range of motion. So then it became hard to mount a bike. It became hard to get into a bathtub. It became hard to have sex. And my husband and I, we were like, we got to find a new position. Like this is, and then it was painful. Then it was no fun. And then you're not looking forward to it. So then it changes
So
a lot of things.
when you say hard, like, so was it actually like you were just stiff, like it's like like it's not moving? And then what was the pain like? Because there's a lot of women that just think they've got pain or stiffness with aging. How do we know what's like normal and where, no, wait, this is not normal. This is the red flag.
Such a good question that nobody really asked me before, but I think you would know exactly how to get into the mind of your listeners, and it's a good point. So I'm hyper flexible, and I have to go through one. That's one of the 9 risk factors, and I thought it was really cool because I could do a yoga pose without even trying. I was just born that way, and so when you start to lose, like let's say I you were doing a frog, when you have your legs and in the back, you just couldn't get into that position anymore. It just, you felt it was a block. And then some positions where, let's say you were to sit in a lotus position and then you're stuck, you're like, I can't put it back. It's almost like it clicks. It has to click back into place, or you have to move through a really painful point of the joint until you get it back in. And that, when you get to that point, you're like, this is not normal. You will start limping, and you don't really notice it until somebody else points it out, and they're like, "You're limping." You're like, limping again and again and again. And because your body is trying to compensate for the
Mhm.
pain, it's looking for other areas to find comfort, and it's just a signal, a warning signal, like, don't go here. But when you have, like, I was able to do the splits, no
Right.
problem. And then you get less, and then you're like, why can't I do this? And it gets less and less. And then suddenly you're walking with your feet parallel. To get into a car, you try to go in parallel. You can't just stick one leg in and then out the other. And so when you realize, I can't get in the car anymore, I got to go
Mhm.
see a doctor. This is not normal, because your body is just trying to avoid the pain.
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Okay. So yeah, no, it makes sense. And it's an important to understand what the root is, which you actually figured out. Cause sometimes hip pain can be pain from something else. Like for example, I had hip pain for years, but it's because I had no disc between L5, S1. So it was back
Mhm.
related. So my hips were
Mhm.
overcompensating, fixed the back, the hip pain went away. So I think it's
Mhm.
important for people to understand the distinction. Now you had said earlier that you had a bunch of the risk factors. You had a bunch of the genetic markers. What were those?
So they're the genes. You're born with certain genes that are more inflammatory, like they're good for certain inflammation and bad
Mhm.
for other inflammation. I was born with these wonky bones. So that's partly genetic as
Yep.
well. Being female, can't change that.
Well, it
um,
depends who you ask, but yeah,
yeah,
take it as
yeah. Exactly. You're born. So you have the loss of hormones, menopause. That's also increases the risk. Um, and then I was hyperflexible,
Mhm.
hip dysplasia. It's when your hips you just sort of get out of the socket. Then you athletic. Well, you're trying to be good, trying to exercise, but you're
Yeah.
you know you're at more at risk, but being sedentary also is a risk, so you don't want to be
Mhm.
sedentary either. And it doesn't mean that I over exercise. I'm very athletic just like you, although you've
Sure.
done a lot more than me. But I remember speaking to some of my regenerative medicine doctors, and I would say, did I do this to myself? Did I overtrain or something? And she said, you are not a professional athlete. Like, this doesn't happen to professional athletes at your age. So it's nothing you've done, and you did well to exercise, because that probably prolonged and you were able to get away from surgery a bit longer. If you have a job where you're lifting heavy things, obviously a lot of movement, that also is a risk factor. I don't know if I was that was maybe 3, 4, maybe 7 or 8 of those. Smoking, of course, smoking is a high risk factor of all diseases of aging. Being obese as well. And when you have osteoarthritis, what do? You go to Dr. Google, you find out what should I do? How do I reverse this? And what everything I read was lose weight. But I was like, this is not my case. I felt so alone. So I really appreciate you allowing me to open this can of worms for women who feel like, I don't know, I'm athletic, I'm lean. Like, why is this happening to me? You don't have to be obese. But if you are obese, that makes sense. There's obviously more pressure on those joints. So weight loss is one of the solutions, but it wasn't for me. So those are the major risk factors. And if I think of any more, I'll put them out. But more or less, a lot of us are in this camp, and we want to be able to preserve our joints. And there was honestly doesn't seem like there was anything I really could have done. I could have delayed it, possibly. Maybe I would have had a lot earlier. I know women who do have these surgeries in their 20s and 30s because they really have been set up. Oh, and having injuries is another thing. Injuries that maybe are never resolved, and that's something. That's one thing I think in my list of sort of what could I have done? Maybe I could have recovered better from exercise. I was somebody who just pushed it and pushed it. A little pain, no big deal. Just pushed right through it, and maybe my body did need time to recover. And again, maybe that just would have delayed the surgeries, or I don't know. I would never know if would ever be able to reverse it. But most of the time, it's really difficult to reverse osteoarthritis. Osteoporosis, on the other hand, is another story.
Few things. If you did not work, we're going to talk about solutions obviously today too, but if you did not address the osteoarthritis, you're like, well, it's pain, it's stiff. What continues to happen? Does it get worse? Does it spread? Take us down, like, if you do not address it, and is it linked at all to osteoporosis? Do they go together?
They don't go together, because when I originally checked my bones, up until most recently, I never had a bad DEXA scan. DEXA is the scan that you take to look at the density of the bones. And then I took another scan, which we can talk about later on, called the REMS scan. And most recently, even during the osteoarthritis situation before my surgeries, I was told I have very strong bones. So despite having bad joints, I had strong bones. So you can have reverse too. So it's not it's one doesn't go hand in hand. So I'm glad we can be really clear that they're two totally different things. And if you don't do anything with osteoarthritis, it's a degenerative disease. I hate that word, and I was avoiding that
Mhm.
word like the plague.
Yeah.
It is not a wear and tear disease. I've interviewed several experts and in world leaders in osteoarthritis, and they say this is not a wear and tear, which really surprises a lot of people. They're like, no, you're wearing out the joints, so it's a wear and tear thing. No, it's not a wear and tear thing. It's an inflammatory thing. It's a cascade of inflammation. And so I think this is to understand. That's why I thought, I wonder if maybe I had some injuries in my life that weren't fully resolved, even though I felt fine. Maybe it just kind of was kept going, but it will usually get worse. But I think there's things that we can do to
Yes.
revamp
Yes.
it.
But somebody listening to this, if they're feeling like, well, gosh, some of the stuff you're describing, I have that. You want them, I'm assuming, to know not to ignore that and to have hope around it. Because if they do ignore it, like you said, it could continue to get worse. So it's not going to just magically get better on its own. It
Mhm.
could get worse. And what I didn't get, could it spread to other areas? So like, for example, if you have this in your knees or your hips and you're not addressing it, is that something that because it's inflammation or it's just systemic, that it's going to go other areas? Or is it more that your knees and your hips would get worse?
I can't answer that question fully confidently. My intuition says it's not something that spreads. It's not like a
Mhm.
wildfire, because honestly, my first injury was when I was 23 or 24 skiing. I tore my ACL. It's gone, never repaired it. If there's anywhere in my body that should have osteoarthritis, it should be my knee.
Sure.
Now, some people have said, well, because you were compensating for the knee, you probably had a small
Yeah.
shift in your gait, and then you put more weight on the other hip, and that's could have been. So that's why some people say injuries could be related, but it is. I don't think it is, but don't quote me on that.
Makes sense. I think though you would probably agree that that theory makes sense. Like if you have a bad knee or you have a bad hip, you're going to overcompensate. So you might create wear and tear someplace else. But I also think inflammation anywhere in the body creates a trigger response. So you have inflammation in your body, it's like toxic overload. You're going to have inflammation. Your body works harder in all different areas. So you might start feeling pain in other areas, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, what is it? What's the definition of inflammation, and where is it? Is it the gut? Is it your cells? Is it the fat cells? Is it? There's so many different types of inflammation that I think we'd have to be better able at defining it. But I wouldn't say it was like contagious kind of a thing. But if you're inflamed, then yeah, you're probably the way you're living or something you're doing. It's possible that that transfers over. When we think about there was something I wanted to mention in terms of inflammation. Whatever, it just slipped my mind. But there is, it's not. I just don't think just it would go exactly hand in hand. But I, for example, and I know many women in my community as well who are similar. Well, they'll go, "Oh, I feel joint pain. I know I have inflammation," and then they get their HSCRP, their C-reactive proteins marker. It's a blood test that people can get to see the just general inflammation in the body. It's nearly zero. Like what I know, and I was one of those too. It's like, why is I know I have inflammation in my body, but that number keeps coming out like everything's crystal clean. So
Yeah, that's a good
again,
point. Yeah, and I think inflammation's kind of become this buzzword, especially with all the peptides and everything. We hear that word a lot, but that's a good point. Like if you check in your blood and you're not seeing that high in C-reactive protein, maybe it's not that, and we need to redefine that. That makes sense.
I could see you as being somebody like that when you were checking with your back and you feel it, but you lead a very healthy
Yeah.
lifestyle. That CRP would
In
probably
my
be.
case, I did have very high blood markers before when I
Mhm.
had my implant rupture, when I was living in mold. I had a lot of stuff going
Yeah,
on. So it's
yeah.
hard for me to know what was actually creating the inflammation. There were so many variables, ruptured
Mhm.
implant, ruptured disc. Like I had so many things. But I do know now those markers are back to normal and I also don't feel pain. So whether I can prove it or not, I totally get that's anecdotal. Like, but I felt when I felt like that, my blood markers matched it. But I understand
Yeah,
also people do feel and don't have blood markers that match. So
yeah.
you never
Well,
know.
these
You
other
don't know.
markers, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about osteoporosis and what you discovered there and how that's different.
So osteoporosis is something that is concerning a lot of women in midlife. And that's because that's when we have changes in the loss of our hormones. There's loss of estrogen starts to decline, progesterone, testosterone. These are the main hormones that you've talked about them so much. And so people hopefully kind of know what they are. But when you lose those hormones, we always call them quote unquote protective. They are very protective in many ways. They're an anti-inflammatory, and they help lubricate the joints. They help build bone. They stop bone loss. So we see, if you were to look under a scan, well, you can see that we're starting to lose bone, and we're starting to lose bone in our mid-30s. So it's something that's happening, but we just don't see it. We don't feel it. That's what we call osteoporosis the silent killer, because you don't feel your bones getting brittle. And that's when we're only 65, usually that's when insurance covers a scan, but by then you already in deep into osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is different. And I think there's a lot of information running around now, especially around DEXAs, and we're all quite concerned. And many of us are getting scanned earlier to see where are we on this spectrum. And I have to say, in my community, most of us have osteopenia, even though I tend to attract the athletic person or somebody who's healthy, they're doing peptides and eating healthy. It's just like, why are these women having osteopenia? And they're also very pro hormone, so they're taking the hormones. What is going on?
And what is osteopenia? Sorry, if you're okay
sorry,
defining that
right.
too.
Thank you for, so osteoporosis is the bone, low bone density, and osteopenia is the phase before osteoporosis, kind of like pre-diabetes. Like you're getting there, and this is all determined by a T-score in a scan. You take a bone scan. Usually it's the DEXA, DEXA, and you're laying down in this bed, and you have this little machine like hover over you. It's painless. It takes 5 minutes. It's quite easy to do, and then it looks at the density of the bone, and then it gives you this scored so that the doctors can say, oh, you're at risk for a fracture. Because who cares about a score and a number? We care about, am I going to fall and have a fracture, break a bone, and all the things that happen after that. And that's 50% of the women over the age of 50 will have an osteoporotic fracture. We'll have a fracture, not because our bones are fragile, which is kind of a big deal. Well, that's a lot of us. What is going on? Well, we can thank the loss of our hormones, right? That's kind of what's happening. We're more at risk. Women have more osteoporosis than men. Although men, when you take away their estrogen in mice models, we see that they have more brittle bones. So it is protective for them as well. But for us, it is more devastating. We have smaller body frames. We have, even when I got my hip replacement, I remember there were certain procedures that they didn't recommend because the women's bones, like that neck of the femur, tends to fracture more than a man's. So we couldn't have that procedure. So it is really important to look at our bones and our bone health, because it is a marker of many other things, and bone and muscle go together. And this is why we want to build more muscle to protect the bones. But osteoporosis is something that I think when we get this score, and I felt the same way when I had my first score when I was, I've had plenty of DEXA showing they were fine for many years, but I think it was when I was 52, more or less, 53. And I was told I had osteopenia, and I was like, what? Yeah. So I was partly like surprised, but partly not surprised, because I was really starting or in the middle of my osteoarthritis journey, where I was told no impact, no heavy lifting, take it easy, rest. I was on baby doses of hormones. So I was just, just playing around trying to get them up. And I guess I thought, well, you know what, it makes sense. I shouldn't be surprised, but I was really bummed. I was really devastated. Because when you think about, if I have osteopenia now, even though it's not yet osteoporosis, what's going to happen when I'm 60 or 70? If I don't do anything now, then for sure I'll have an osteoporotic fracture. I'll be in that camp of the 50% who do. So I better do something now. And this is why I love midlife, because it's an opportunity for us to make a change. We can complain all we want, but sometimes it forces us to make these changes that we really should be doing. And we want to protect our future self. The gerontologist in me is looking at the future and wants to see that as we're 70, 80, 90, we can still be independent and mobile and do the things that we want to do, whatever it is that you want to do. Some people want to climb Kilimanjaro and run marathons. Other people, they just want to be able to pick up their grandkids, and that's fine. So this is why I understand the fear. And the problem comes is when with a DEXA, there can be problems. They're not perfect. And even though it's the quote unquote gold standard, we are put on this, we're given a score, and then we have fear around it. And what my doctor told me, and this was just a general doctor, it wasn't my doctor, but the doctor who read the scan said, okay, well, you just walk and take some calcium. And I was like, that's it? Like, I don't think that's gonna serve me very much.
Yeah.
And I knew better, but I was thinking, this is what the information that everyone is getting after a scan like this. And so as I dug deeper, I learned about another scan called the REMS scan. Have you heard of
Okay.
it?
No, I haven't. Tell me about that.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I like this scan a little better. It's radio frequency ecographic multispectrometry. It's a mouthful.
Okay.
So it's REMS. And what this scan does, it's an ultrasound. And if you're, don't like radiation and all that, and you're like, I'm doing DEXA, we'll get the REMS. The REMS scan not only looks at the bone density, but it looks at bone strength and both quality. And I believe it's a better predictor of fracture risk. And unfortunately, it's not known enough. It's not widely available. It's a new technology. I always love new technology. So you'll get people who poo-poo it and go, well, it's not enough research. There's research, and the research is really positive. So I'm going with that. So if you are given this osteopenia or even osteoporosis diagnosis, go get a REMS. Go see what the quality of bone is. It's kind of like you can step on a scale that tells you a number. Like, who cares how many pounds you are? I want to know, is this muscle or is this bone? And am I losing the fat and gaining the muscle? Well, then I know I'm in the right trajectory. And this is what the REM scan can tell you. And it is in the US. You can find places. It's harder. It's a little harder in Europe, even though the technology is from Italy. And what I like about the REMS, usually the people who have this tool, and it's literally like the size of a carry-on. It's not a huge thing, and there's a little wand it's just like an ultrasound. It is an ultrasound, and you feel like you're pregnant again, looking for a baby, because they go over your belly to look at your spine, and immediately you get a score. And so they can tell you not only the density, but the strength. And I can tell you the story that my husband just got his very first bone scan, and he did it with the REMS. And just to give you context, he's 65 years old. Last year, he walked across Europe 11 months every single day, walking with a heavy backpack. It was about 40 pounds. And so this guy is fit. He walked across Europe. He gets a bone scan with the REMS, and he's got osteoporosis. And you're like, what? However, he has very strong bones. And so if he took a DEXA, he would be put on medication that he probably didn't need. And so it's something that, again, this fear that's running around, I want to put it into context. I want people to take a breath and know it's just a score. And after I've interviewed so many of these bone experts who do this all day long, who have huge communities of women who have osteopenia or osteoporosis trying to reverse this, they really, really stress that this is just one piece of the puzzle. We have to look at the whole picture. Is this person athletic? Are they sedentary? What are they eating? Are they eating enough protein? Are they doing the exercises? What is it around this person? And do we really just want to reverse the score of a DEXA? Do we care even that number gets better, or do we care that we get her strong bones? And that's what I think is much more important, is to focus on really the quality of the bone, not just the density.
That makes sense, because it's not just like we don't want to just focus on scale number. It's like, because there's so many other variables, like you said, what's the muscle, what's the fat, there's a lot of other variables to it. That same thing with lab work, blood tests. You can see low thyroid, but like, how are you feeling? So it's not just about treating the numbers. That makes complete sense. Okay.
And can I add to that? Just because what I've learned so much about the DEXA, I think the number was, don't quote me, it was something high, something like 70% of the people who have fractures have normal DEXA scans. Something ridiculous.
Wow.
This is Dr. Doug Lucas, so I think it's just great of information. And so he also, there's a Dr. John Newstead, he shares a story of his mother-in-law, I think it was his mother-in-law, who had uh, osteoporosis, reversed it with medication, doing fine. Doctors were happy. He was happy. And then she falls and fractures a bone.
Mm.
And he says, how can that happen? So again, this is just a number and it's just one piece of the puzzle. And just because you're safe, quote unquote, safe, and you're in the green and everything's fine, doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a deeper dive and say, do I really have strong bones? And I think whether you green or red or yellow, whatever you are, because that's how the scan goes, you need to focus on your bones and your bone health, because you're still aging and
Yeah.
you're, breaking down bone and building it up. It's this fluid thing. It's like a living organism, and we need to have more buildup than breakdown, or at least have them balanced and not be in the breakdown zone.
When we look at older people from behind, so we're not even looking at what they look like appearance wise. So from behind and how they move, you many times can tell someone's age by how they move. And I had heard a quote once, never let an old person move into your body. And what I took that as is kind of what you're saying here. You don't have to let those behaviors that we think are associated with old move into your body. I'll talk about my mom for a minute. My mom's 80. Health markers great on labs. She looks great. Looks younger than her age, but I watch her move and it's painful for me to watch her move. She moves very slow. She's in pain. She usually tweaks herself. And she has a lot of those. She has osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, like all of those. And she was one of those people told just walk and take calcium. And I think she was told to take Tums or something like that. So when I look at that, she's 80 and I think I want to move different. And then I'll see other people that they turn around and you would have never guessed that they were 80 because you're watching how they move and it's so different. So how we move is really, really critical. And so what you're saying is really resonating. We get very confusing advice on what to do to prevent and even reverse. And I'm just going to kind of throw out a bunch of things I've heard, and then I want to have you walk us through kind of what you've learned and what you're doing. So for example, the advice walking, we hear that. We hear about calcium. We now hear about jumping and rebounding, even vibration plates. We hear about adding muscle, although nobody really explains how does that work? Like, how does adding muscle help? We hear about hormones and what happens if someone chooses not to take hormones or can't take hormones. Is that going to hurt things? I know the other day I was shopping and I saw a pair of sneakers I wanted and they were like the trendy, it reminds me of those like the Air Max. And my husband's like, absolutely not. Those are terrible for bone loss. I was like, hadn't thought about that. So no puff in your shoes, right? Okay. Puff in your shoes. That's what I'll call it. No walking on. It's confusing. Then we talk about vitamin D, sun for bone loss. Like it's very confusing. And then supplements. What do we actually need to know about these things? What did you discover? What are you doing?
Yeah, there are many things, and you'll find research supporting it all. That's why it's even more confusing, because you're like, what do I believe? And this is where the biohacker in me goes, we're all bio-individual. You choose your method and you test and you measure and assess. And if it's working for you, fabulous. And if it's not, then you can change and shift. I don't care what the research says. The research will always have outliers. Maybe you're an outlier. I don't know. So this is where, with so many things the things that you mentioned, and we know that exercise is important, right? We know that impact is important, and we know that strength training is important for not only the bones but also for the muscles. So the rebound thing, there's some research, and again,
wait, hold on before you get into rebounding, and tell me if I'm asking you too many things that you're like, I don't know the answer. But why? How and why? Like, why does the weight training, like, why is that helping the bone?
So the bones need a stimulus, they need a stress, and they need a force. And I know you know this too. So and you need that to build muscle, right? But you also need it to build the bone. The bone needs to get that it's just a signal that's sent out. And I don't want to get technical because then we're going to lose people.
Okay.
So we want to just understand it's the impact. And even when you say lifting heavy weights, it's not just for the muscle, but your bone actually having it bent because you're lifting really, really heavy, again, with control, with safety, etc. But it's that bending of the bone from a heavy weight. It's the impact, it's the force that sends the signal that tells the body, oh, okay, I need to build bone because there's some breakdown, kind of like the muscle as well. The muscle gets torn and you need to repair it. It doesn't get the signal from walking. It doesn't, it's not that it doesn't get the signal. It doesn't get a strong enough signal, let's say. So walking, you need a force that's 4 times your body weight to get a signal that's strong enough to build bone. Again, this is just one study, and this is just, maybe you're different. Maybe you need just 3 times. Maybe you need 5. Like again, but there's the latest research shows that we need 4. And they only looked at hips and building bone in the hip in 6 months, having about 1% of a buildup, which is really quite impressive. So if you walk, it's only 1 to 1.5 times. If you run, it's about 3 times. And if you jump off a step that's 8 inches or 20 centimeters high, then it's 4 times. And then if you had a little rebound after that, like, jump and then jump off and the bounce over, then it's 5 times. So we know that impact that's strong enough matters. Now, if you jump even higher, then there's going to be obviously more force, but you have to be careful too. If you have osteoporotic bones or if you have joint issues and you have problems, like don't be doing this stuff without the guidance from your doctor.
This is where it gets confusing because, someone hears that and they're like, oh, I'm going to go start doing that. Right. But if you already have that going on, that could be dangerous because then you could get fractured. You could have that. So that's where it gets a little confusing. So if I'm hearing this correctly, it's almost like you do this before it even gets to that point. And then you need to know your starting point before you're doing those things. And then if you already have your starting point and that's going on, you've got to do this gradually, I would imagine.
Yeah, of course. Like anything, you build up gradually. Even if you don't have osteoporotic bones, if you never exercise in your life, you always want to start low and slow, and then you gradually build up. But I like knowing a baseline to get your score, get your whatever, whether it's a DEXA, I prefer REMS, and then you just know where you're at. And then you can test every year. If everything's fine, I mean, I'm talking about a woman in midlife. I'm getting my kids who are in their 20s tested because I want to know what are their bones like now. And then I'll do it again, maybe 5 years or so. And doesn't really matter. So I think just having a baseline is really good for anyone of any age. And then you can do some exercises. Now, this one study that I'm talking about showed that it was in 6 months. These people tested again and they had 1% increase in their hips. Okay. Now, jump roping, somebody asked about jump roping, and the jump roping was not as impactful as jumping off of a step.
I wonder why. Yeah, I guess the force of coming down.
Yeah, but it also depends on how you're jump roping. Like if you do the alternate one, jumping one leg, then the other leg, that was less impactful than jumping on 2 feet. Now, if you jump higher, then there's going to be more force. But if you're doing these little hops, you want to go fast and you do shorter hops, and there's less of an impact. So naturally you get less of a signal to the bone. And again, very individual. This is just one study. So you'd have to go, maybe the short ones are fine for you. This is where you want to test
How would rebounding, and maybe you don't know this either, but how does rebounding help that? Because rebounding would be it's like literally pushing you back up. So you're not getting that force of like the jumping down.
You're talking about rebounding on
so when somebody rebounds on a mini trampoline, they market those for bone loss prevention, but that doesn't make sense because that's the opposite.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the research with that, but that to me doesn't, like you, it doesn't make doesn't.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not possible. I just want to understand because if the research is saying it's the jumping down, the stepping off of, then that doesn't make any sense to me. Why rebounding would help.
Yeah, and I don't think it would be as impactful, but I'd have to look at the research, so I don't really know.
Okay, then my next question, and again, Zora went through this, and this is what she does, but she's not a bone surgeon. She's not. So I'm kind of putting her on the spot here with some of these questions. She's just done a lot of the research and dug, so that's why I'm asking here. But what about vibration plates? Do you know anything there?
There is research showing the vibration plates could be impactful for bone, and it's good. But it's very, for me with hip surgeries, at least my surgeon told me no.
Really?
Because I've got parts in me, and he said he didn't say no forever, but it was
Okay.
like no for the first year.
Yeah.
And so, but I do that it does show an improvement in bone. I don't remember how much, how big of an impact, but it does make an impact, and
Okay.
it's good for bone.
So I have
So
a
I think
funny
it's,
story about the vibration. I have a vibration plate. I have a power plate, and I just like the
yeah,
way it feels. I've done workouts on it, but I had a disc replacement surgery, and I didn't really think much about it. But I think it was like 4 months after my disc replacement. I knew not to go on it right away, but about 4 months
yeah.
after, I started standing on it again and doing on the low speed, like squats on it, planks off it, whatever. And then I started, because my morning routine is like my red lights and everything right there. I just started sitting on it. I'm like, I'm just gonna sit on it. It feels kind of good. I'm like, I'm gonna sit on
Yeah.
there and do my red lights, and then I'll stand at the end. Um, and then one day my back started hurting a little bit, and I was like, oh. So I happened to look on chat, and it says, if you have a disc replacement, do not sit on the vibration plate. Whoops. I'm okay now. But I was, so I
Yeah.
think what you said about parts in you, we do have to be careful there. We got to be aware.
Yeah, you forget, because now we're back in action. We're like, yay, you're
Yeah.
doing everything that you used to do, and you go, oh wait, I forgot I have
Yeah.
parts in me. Like, and
I don't
they
think you
should be
should sit
careful.
on it if you have this part in your spine. I learned that, but I'm doing the standing on. It's 6 months. It's 7 months past now, so I stand on it on the lowest vibration and do some squats, activating muscles, so it's not going directly like to spine. So I think,
Yeah.
I guess the lesson, if you're listening, is if you do have parts, you've got to ask your surgeon, or ask and make sure you're, like you said, probably a year out versus
Yeah,
even what I
and
just
I
said
think
about 6 months.
and I think there's workarounds. Like for me, maybe there's things I could lie on it and not affect my hips.
Yeah,
And that's the thing. Maybe you put your feet on it, or somehow you find an angle where it doesn't affect your spine. So it's, again, we have to, I think we can make adjustments, but you got to work with somebody who obviously knows your condition, and then and knows the power plate pretty well,
yeah,
right?
makes
You
sense.
understand what's, because I think all power plate, no, power plate is a brand name, but these vibration plates, they're different,
Yeah,
and you need, so the key in terms of bone building, I don't remember the number of the frequency, but there is a certain frequency that power plate has that some of the others don't, and that's what will build bone and also be more safe for anything
makes
that's
sense.
going on in your body. So I do know, yeah, I've got actually the research that Power Plate sent me. I just haven't looked at it yet.
Yeah,
But
I'm
it is
curious now. I was
there.
afraid to ask my surgeon, but now that my back does not hurt, I will probably ask him to look at it. I didn't want to admit that I had done something not good, that I wasn't supposed to do that. But I'm okay. I'm okay now.
Yeah, thank
Okay,
God.
what about hormones and how that's connected? What have you learned there?
Yes. So fascinating about hormones. So if osteoporosis it's the lack of estrogen that's driving this, then it makes sense. Well, let's put it back, right?
Mhm.
And that's what hormone therapy can be used for, as a prevention of osteoporosis. It's like there's so much disagreement on hormones, and again, but it seems everybody agrees on
Yeah,
that fact. So it works, and it's been shown in lots of research to help and support bones, because you're building back the bone rather than bone loss. Now, it was really interesting when I interviewed John Newstead and Doug Lucas on this. They dig really deep into the research, and what they told me was that the research that they were looking at showed that in order to stop bone loss, and remember, bone loss and bone building are two different things, you only need in your blood about 11 picograms of per ml of estrogen, or estradiol, which is very low. Like
low,
that's
very low.
like nothing. It's like a drop of estrogen that you're taking. And in order to start building bone, you need 20
Okay,
picograms per ml. And that is also
very
very
low.
low. That's, for
Like
you
most
don't
people
want,
post menopause still even have that. That's like so.
yeah,
I know some people tank, but even when we say we tank, like I was having hot flashes under 30, so
yeah.
that's very low.
It is low. And that being said, they said this is not like our goal. They said, well, there's research also showing that you need
Sure.
100 on average. So,
Okay.
they were just looking at some of the research that's out there. So what they do with their patients is they like to get them somewhere, I think they said between 60 and 100, more or less, depends on, because some women can't tolerate when they have 100 picograms per ml in their blood, and it's like too much, and some of it's not enough. So again, we're all so individual, but they know that they don't need much to start building bone back up. Again, that's just starting. Like they want to be, doctors are, in the optimization business, so they want optimal bone. And then they also want to protect your brain and your heart and I hate using that word protection, because that gives us the false impression that we can, just take our hormones and forget everything else. But they want to get the benefits as much as they can by having a little higher levels in the bloodstream. And then of course the patient having no more symptoms or feeling really good. And so that's the funny story that I thought, gosh, it just blew my mind how little we need. So, but I think one of your next questions is do we need hormones to build our bones back, right? And the answer is no, we don't. We can do this without our estrogen. Of course, it's a nice support. And I always think HRT is just one tool in the toolkit. Now, if you cannot or you choose not to, that's fine too. It's, again, menu of choice. It's up to you how you want to live your life. So if you decide you don't want to do it, then we do all the other things that we should be doing anyways, even if you are taking hormones, in terms of the food and the exercise and the sleep and the stress management and everything else, which this does impact. And you did ask something about muscle, and I didn't answer that. How does the muscle affect the bone? And one of the bigger levers is because muscle is actually pulling bone. When we're exercising, it pulls the bone, and that also sends a stimulus. I forgot to answer that question, but they always go hand in hand.
Yeah, typically people with higher muscle mass have less bone loss issues. So those do correlate together. I know one of my big priorities in my 50s is how do I add muscle, which, my gosh, if you're listening and you happen to be in your 30s, do it now, because it is so much harder in our 50s to add it. We can work on preventing losing it, but adding it, it gets more, it's not impossible. It just is a lot more challenging than it was certainly in my 30s. My 30s, I would look at a weight and protein and add muscle. Now it's a lot harder. I have to like really work at progressive overload and really work at eating the right nutrients to build it. What are some of the things you're doing? And like, what what supplements did you add in to help with this? Like, are you doing creatine? Are you doing calcium? Are you doing algae cal? I know that we both had talked about like, what are some of the things, and how do we get out through like hype versus real?
I know, it's so confusing out there. I think I wish it was just one thing. Well, we just take this pill and it's always going to be good, or just take the hormones, all be good.
They were told to take Tums. My mom was told to take Tums years ago. I'm like, I don't think that's the right calcium, but okay.
No, we're not getting the right information. And one thing I forgot to mention was on the tip of my tongue when I said, usually the people who have the REMS scan, who's testing the bone. I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but I don't want to forget. These are very often functional medicine doctors and people who are a little bit more cutting edge, who are looking at the future and want something easier and better for their patients. And what they would tend to do is say, okay, you've got some osteopenia or osteoporosis, whatever, or your bones are fragile or weaker than we expected. Here's what we're going to do. And what they often do, well, there's one that's called Screen My Bones. And what they do is they would say, let's take a mineral test and a vitamin test. Let's see where you're deficient. And then let's start replacing that, rather than here, just take all these supplements. They really try to target. They would tell you, let's get some exercise plan in you. How is your stress? So they look at the whole lifestyle. They would not tell you just walk and take calcium. So mind you, if you do find a center that has that, they're more likely to give you a plan, which I'm going to share my plan now. So my plan is, well, I have the exercise component. Yay, I can bring that back. I can do more impact. I do the jumping off the stairs. And I didn't mention, if you are going to jump off the stair, and this is safe for you and you can do this, the research showed that you only do it 3 times a week. Like, it's not something you do every day. You don't need to do it every day. If you do it more, maybe you go faster. I don't know.
And how many times when you do this?
And then you jump off 10 times and you do 3 rounds. 3 rounds of that.
Okay.
So it's it. You jump off a stair 10 times, like simple. You take a break for, I don't know, a few seconds or whatever to get your breath back or whatever you need. Then you go back, do 10 again, take a rest, do 10 again, and you're done. I mean, you
Do
could
you
add
do it
this
with
on.
shoes on or no shoes?
It depends where I'm at. If I'm at the gym and I have my shoes on, very often I do it when I'm outside. I'm one of these
Okay.
people like a monkey. If I
Yeah.
see the bar, I start doing pull-ups. If I
Yeah,
like
that's
see a
great.
stair, I just go and jump off of it. So probably with my shoes on more.
Okay.
But if
According to my husband, don't do it with puffy shoes based on nothing other than his opinion.
shoes,
But he
yeah.
said barefoot shoes or flat shoes so you can help with your bone. He didn't really have a backup statement. He just told me that. So
That's a really good question. And I'm going to
yeah,
dive into that
please
because
let
I
me know
think,
because it's more fashionable to wear the puffy ones.
yeah, I think doing it rather than not doing it is
Yeah,
already something, right? That's already great. Whether if you do it with shoes, fine. If you don't do it, then it's not going to work. So
totally.
probably I see his thinking and it makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Well, you'll probably feel the impact more, you would think, and I'm just speculating.
Yeah,
So
I'm
but
curious.
I do want to, I'm going to go dive into that question because, and I'll let you know, because I think it's
Thank you.
interesting. Does it matter what shoes and
Yep.
what kind of shoes you have on, if any at all?
Well, I mean, I understand his point too, because we add all this cushion, right, to help. The cushion started not just from fashion, it started to feel better. So like your hips were hurting, whatever, you add all this cushion to your shoes, but people quickly realized you'd get other problems from those. So but now it's like a fashion thing where people wear
Yeah.
the thicker ones.
And it
So
makes you taller.
it does make you taller. You're right. And that's
Yeah.
important too. So,
Yeah.
okay. So this is kind of a weird question, but so there's a lot of talk about GLPs and bone loss. Do you feel because people just losing too much weight and muscle? Do you think is there any research showing that? What is your opinion around that?
I think GLPs, it's probably not enough research on bones because I don't want to say it's completely new, but it's newer. So it's probably, my opinion would be you probably need more research. Whatever research you find, you probably need more research, but it makes sense. I think if you're going to go off of the stereotype that's out there of the people doing the GLP-1s, because there's all kinds. I see people doing it right. It's working out fabulously. And I see people doing it all wrong. So the wrong way, which people like to target, is you're not eating enough. And we know we need to eat to build bone. How
To
are the bones going
maintain
to
and build muscle?
Yeah, to build the muscle and the bone. The bones need protein. The bone, just like the muscles need protein, they need calcium, they need all these nutrients, they need all these minerals. So if you're not feeding yourself, because what happens, it removes your appetite. And so people tend to eat less and then they're losing the weight. Of course, there's a lot of other mechanisms of action that happen with the GLP-1s. And I'm not the expert to ask on those mechanisms, but I think the big driver that we're seeing is the caloric restriction that's happening. And so there we go. If you're not getting enough calories, you're not getting enough nutrients, and you're not getting enough protein, how are you going to build the muscle? It makes sense. You're going to lose muscle and you're going to lose bone. And if again, are you exercising? You're not exercising. If you were exercising, you still need to feed the bones, just like you need to feed the muscles. They don't grow by themselves, or they'll take it off of somewhere else. So essential amino acids. This is why you and I both take them because we want to make sure we get enough. And so we need those amino acids. Those are the building blocks of bones and muscles and hair and skin and nails and everything else. So I think it's more of a malnutrition question, problem than an under protein intake, because we could blame the exercise and you're not exercising, and that also makes an impact. And yes, that's important. But even if you are, you still need to get fuel the bones.
With everything that you've learned, what supplements have you specifically added to help with this? And I know you said it's pretty custom, like you want people to actually test and see what they're deficient, but I know there's some universal things, like for example, aminos, like you just said. I do the same thing with aminos. I use Kion because I want all 9. I'm also I do B minerals because I want to cover my bases with minerals. What about collagen? What about calcium? What else are you doing?
Yeah. So I do it all. I mean, I have it all. So I think, first of all, nutrition first, like we always promote, we got to get the food in, but it's not what you take, it's what you absorb that really matters. This is why I really like the testing. If your gut's not absorbing it and your body's not absorbing it, you're just wasting your money. So go test and see where you're deficient in. Try to get those foods in. So protein is always number one, and for bones as well as muscle. And most of us are just not getting enough. I think in my generation, in my community as well, what I'm seeing is a lot of women are under eating and
Yeah.
overtraining because they're trying to lose the belly fat. They're trying to do what they did when we were 30, and it's
Sure.
not working anymore. And what's happening is a cascade of other problems in the body. So it's hard to get them to go, okay, let's now eat 3 times a
Yeah.
day. And if you need a snack, then make sure it's a protein rich snack. And so this is where we depend on the essential amino acids. I take the Kion as well, which I love. And then I take the same, I also take the bean minerals. It's nice to have that, but I do eat a lot of vegetables as well. I'm
Hmm.
more of
Me too.
a vegetable, and then the meat is the kind of condiment on the plate, but it's always, for me, it's around 30 to 40 grams each
Okay.
meal, and I eat 3 times a day. So I love food and I like
Hmm.
to eat. I tend to eat large quantities. So I always make sure that I have a lot of color in my plate. And I think that can help people just go by color. If you only have 1 or 2 colors there every day, try to add in another color, whether it's carrots or red peppers or purple cabbage. Try to choose the purple
Hmm.
or the green, just to have another polyphenol in there, or has more nutrients in there. And then, so once those have minerals, they have nutrients, they have things that feed the bone as well. Protein, though, is king, so don't skimp on that. And I tend to take protein powders as well when I need it. I love making protein pancakes because it makes me feel
Hmm.
like I'm eating pancakes, and I get an extra. I eat dairy, so I tolerate it. So I love having cottage
So you're
cheese.
getting most of your calcium from that, from actual dairy.
Yeah, calcium, spinach. I get, yeah, I don't drink milk, but I do tend to lean on the yogurt and the cottage
Yeah.
cheese a lot. And so
And
that's
then
my
what's your
personal,
do you have feedback? So I know I just started recently taking Algae Cal, just like kind of
yeah.
as a preventative. Do you have, I know you're taking that as well. Do you have feedback on that yet?
Yes. Yeah. So I think AlgaeCal is a great bone centric supplement, because we can be like, oh, I take my minerals, but if it's not the right minerals in the right quantity, and they have synergistic effects, then maybe you're not benefiting as much as having something very bone centric. And AlgaeCal, that's all they do. That's what I like about it. It's like they focus on the bones. And
Hmm.
so they have, I think it's like 13 minerals that are
Okay.
essential for bone health. And then they have algae, like that's why it's called AlgaeCal. And
Yeah.
this specific type of algae also helps with the bone. So I can't remember the name of the algae, but that's a key component that I wouldn't have in bean minerals, for example, or
For example.
some other
Yeah.
supplement.
Yeah.
And that's
That
why we
makes
want that.
sense.
And then they have, so I started that 3-4 months ago,
Okay.
and I took a DEXA. So my DEXA showed osteopenia, even though REMS is like, your bones are fine, but okay, let's just, try
Yeah.
to improve. I'm still stuck on a number sometimes. And then I'll retest again, and that number should go up. And if it doesn't, get my money back. So like, they're
Okay. I'm
confident.
curious.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
confident.
I've heard I've heard promising things. So I don't, my bone scan did not show any kind of bone loss, but I'm taking it more preventative because why not? I've just
Yeah.
heard too many positive things about it.
We'll take the
Um,
REMS, and then, and just compare, just to be
yeah,
interesting
no,
to.
I want to take that test now too as well. So, okay, so this has been super eye-opening. What do you want women to kind of walk away, and what do you wish I had asked you about this? Like because there's a lot of women listening that this is all new to them. There's a lot of them that just actually got a diagnosis around this. It's scary to them. Kind of help us with some closing thoughts. Like, what do you want them to know, and what do you wish I had asked you?
Yeah, I want them to know, just no fear. This is reversible. It's not like some other things that we can't
Mhm.
not reverse, or it's really hard.
Yeah.
Osteoarthritis is really hard to reverse. Osteoporosis can. And I also want you to not get stuck on a number, right? Even though I understand what that is, know that it's just one piece of the puzzle. It's just one number. There are
Yeah.
people living with osteoporosis diagnoses, but yet their bones are really strong and they will never have a fracture. And I don't want to diminish, if you really do have fragile bones, you have to build those back up. So I don't know where you are. I just find that there's too much fear. Like everyone is in the same bucket, where I think we need to separate the women who really are at risk for having a high risk fracture, and the women who feel that they are, but they aren't. So this is where I want you to dive deeper. And then I want you to also know that if you put these pieces in place in terms of doing the movement, getting the strength training, try to do some jumps, try to get the sleep. Again, this bone is like muscle. It doesn't grow if you don't sleep. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
harder to grow. It's really hard. So you're going against the current if you're not prioritizing your sleep. So work on that, and your stress as well. Stress has an
Makes
impact on
sense.
everything. So it's one of those big levers that we don't look at enough, because we're all living in stress, and it's not the stress that's the problem. It's the response to stress. And this is where I think the fear creates this unnecessary stress, and that's doing nothing for your bones.
Mm.
So try to let that go. You can take a breath, start taking the steps that we talked about today. It's easy to add just a few things to your diet, to add a good supplement, to jump off a step 10 times, 3 times a week. And then you can reassess and check and really see that, feel confident that you are doing all the right things for your bones. And if you are open to HRT, you can look at that, have that conversation with your doctor. If not, don't worry. There are other things that you can do to build your bone.
Zora, this was so helpful today. And please keep us, I want to know, I personally, and I'll have to add back to the show notes, I'd love to know what you see when you retest the algae cal. I'm curious because I'm taking that too. I'm very curious about that. One thing that's coming up for me about the testing. I think sometimes we overtest on things. I just do. I think that we overtest, and then it gets in our head, and then it makes us discouraged, and it puts us off. I'm actually in a place of like doing less tests, because I find that I take them like report cards. And if we're doing all the things to prevent bone loss, and we're we're adding all these things, what's the point of? To me, I'm like, well, I don't want to get the bad news and then go, what was the? So I don't know. I think that we have to also, as midlife women, this is the same, not just with testing. This is with needing it is with testing, all the blood tests, all the scans, so yes, they're tools. And I just want to be mindful for everybody listening to check in with yourself on what's that going to do, because I do believe on what we focus on, we create. And if you're like, I'm doing all these things, I am lifting, I have muscle, I have this, I don't know that scan is going to help you right now, because then you find out the bad news, and then it's like you start thinking, what's the point? So I don't know. Yeah. I jury's still out on that one.
You're right, 100%. I mean, how many times you see people wearing Oura rings or the Apple Watches, and every morning they wake up?
Yeah, I stopped wearing my Oura ring. I'm not saying I won't. I haven't had it on for almost 2 months, and I loved it, but it was becoming a report card to me, and I stopped. Because it was like, I felt great. And then, you had terrible sleep. Okay, now I'm in a bad mood. Yeah. Or exactly. I was very active today, but I didn't quite get my steps now. At least, I don't know. I'm not saying I'll never wear it again. It's charging right now. Actually, I thought about it the other night that I should resume and see. But I'm going more into the less of testing and the less of tracking and the less report cards. For that reason.
I think when it dictates how you feel for your day, or you become worried about it, or you start believing it too much, then it's backfiring. It's time to put it in a drawer, put it away,
take a break,
and let it go, and not to worry about it. And like you said, these tools, I use them, and the girls in my community use them, because we just would like to confirm some of our intuition. Yeah. Is it right?
Yeah, no, and I'm not saying I'll never wear it again. Yeah. Like I wore it for years. I just had to take a little break, because I thought, if it's starting to affect, then I have to change it. And I just think it's just a checking into a test. I've done lots of tests. I've done the scans. But I'm just checking in with myself on why I do things, like, and what's the reasoning behind. Like, I know I went down the whole path with heart. I did the coronary artery scan. It was 0. Then I did it clearly, and I'm like, why am I doing all these things? So, I don't know.
You worry about doing the right thing. We're in this world, we're trying to optimize. And sometimes it gets too much. And I go in ebbs and flows, just like you. I'm like, I had enough and I'm done. Like, I'll get back to it. That's fine. But you just get tired. I get pill fatigue. Yeah. That's just like, I'm so,
I'm down to, there's like 10 supplements that I regularly talk about that I definitely use, but I'm in this place of less as more. So if I'm talking about it, I'm really using it and loving it, and it made the cut, but I've cut out a lot of things too, because I'm like, what's actually necessary? What's actually helping? So,
yeah. And if it's causing stress in your life, you let it go. That's the better thing to do, because stress is a big lever.
Zora, where can people find you? Where can they learn more?
Hackmyage.com is my website, and everything is Hack My Age. And that's on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn and like everywhere. So if you cannot remember that, if you remember Zora the Explorer, like Dora
I
the
love
Explorer,
that.
you'll find me there too. That's my other name.
That's cute. I love that. Thank you, Zora the Explorer. We loved it. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalie.